Yeah, welcome in. Welcome back to another episode of the Format Podcast Live. Yes. As you can see, it's just me. My guys are not with me tonight, so I'm gonna do this on my own. It's been a while since I've done a live show by myself, but I'm gonna go ahead and do that. But I'm gonna give a little bit of time before we go ahead and get started. I see there's nobody in the chat, so I'm gonna chill for a few minutes and see what we got going on. Just saw one pop up. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Appreciate you. But yeah, just hang out a few minutes and see what we got. See if we get some more people come in before we get it started. Just gonna do a couple of topics tonight, as you can see. Definitely gonna talk about Michigan and what they got going on. Gonna talk about Julius Peppers and Michael Jordan. What does Julius Peppers have to do with Michael Jordan? Stick around and you'll see. Also, before we even get started on the main topics, we're gonna do some quick hits, and I'm gonna touch on some items in the world of sports, mainly some Olympic stuff. So I'm gonna get on that. But yeah, like I said, let me give it a few minutes and see what we got. See if we can get anything going. Get a little bit of traffic before we get started. All right. It's kind of different when you're here by yourself. When you get used to doing the show with a panel or a bunch of people, you kind of get away from the flow of doing the show live, just you. But we're gonna get back to it, man. We're gonna get back to it. This is nothing I can't handle. Did a little prep earlier, so definitely got some interesting thoughts to share, and look forward to doing that. Few more minutes. So those of you who are here, why don't you it's just a couple of you. Why don't you pop in the chat? Tell me where you're coming in from, and let's see what we got. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and put this on as well. All right. See a couple more people coming in, but all right, it's a little slow right now, but I guess I'm gonna go ahead and get it started. Um, so like I said, we're gonna talk a little bit of Michigan, as you can see on the rundown, and then we're gonna talk about Julius Peppers and Michael Jordan, and you will find out shortly what Julius Peppers has to do with Michael Jordan and why we're gonna talk about the two of them. But before we get started, you know what time it is. If you're here on YouTube and you haven't already, please make sure you go ahead, click that like, that subscribe, that notification bell. Make sure you're kept up to date whenever we drop new content on the channel. If you want the audio only version of the podcast, open up your audio podcast platform, hit the search bar, type in The Format Podcast, and we should come right up. If you're enjoying the content, make sure you give us that like, that 5-star review, and drop a comment. All that stuff helps us rise in the algorithm, helps us find more sports fans, helps more sports fans find us. And finally, make sure you write it down, put it in your phone, set an alarm, do whatever you got to do to remember. Saturday nights at 7 p.m. we are live here on the Format Podcast, and we'll give you the opportunity to call in, talk to us, get at me. I love it. I can't wait. All right, so I guess we're gonna go ahead and get started. So what I wanted to do is hit on a quick few topics before we actually get started with the main ones. We call these quick hits. So let's do that. So the first thing I wanted to do is, of course, I've been watching a ton of the Olympics over the last week and a half now, and they've been pretty entertaining on a lot of fronts, whether it's basketball, whether track and field, swimming, all that. So obviously the swimming and gymnastics, they were kind of like the main events early on, and now we're really into the meat of the Olympics, and a lot of basketball and a lot of track and field. And a lot of times track and field, especially the sprint events, are what people are generally waiting for. So the men's 100-meter, that's the first thing I want to touch on. So Noah Lyles wins the gold in the men's 100-meter. He's now the fastest man in the world, which, okay, technically he's the fastest man in the world because he won the Olympic 100-meter, right? But obviously we know Usain Bolt's still the fastest man in the world, was he got that 9.58 world record, which I think it's going to take some time before anybody touches that. I think Kushane Thompson from Jamaica, he had the fastest time in the world this year, like 9.76, 9.77. So I guess Usain Bolt is within reach. Now we've had guys run in the 9.6s before, not just Usain Bolt, but I think he's going to take some time before somebody really reaches that pinnacle and breaks that record, which was crazy because if you saw that 9.58, I think it was back in 2008 in Berlin at the World Championships when Usain Bolt broke it, he still wasn't actually like pressed. And I've always said that if somebody really pressed him in a race, he probably would have broken the 9.5 mark, which would have been absolutely insane because a lot of his greatest races and wins, you saw like he was running away from the field and actually slowed down towards the end. But anyway, Noah Lyles in what was probably the most thrilling final in men's 100-meter Olympic history. He won by 5 thousandths of 1 second by just leaning into the tape before Jamaica's Kashane Thompson. So shout out Noah Lyles. You are technically now the fastest man in the world. You are the Olympic 100-meter champion, and that comes with a lot of praise and a lot of gravitas. So shout out to you for that. Um, Next up in the track and field, we saw um, Julian Alfred from the island of St. Lucia. She won, I think she ran for Texas in college, but she won the women's 100-meter, and she's the fastest woman in the world. Again, she doesn't have the fastest time, but she's the Olympic champion, so she's kind of regarded as the fastest woman. And she beat out America's Sha'Carri Richardson, who took home silver. And, good for Sha'Carri. That was kind of a big comeback for her after missing the Tokyo Olympics with, we saw she had the issues where basically she peed hot marijuana after, some personal tragedy in her life, and she was smoking and she ended up being hot and getting kicked off the team and not being able to compete. And everyone was, up in arms about it. But realistically, I wasn't up in arms about it because I'm like, I know that you went through tough times, but the rules are the rules. You violated the rules. Now you got to deal with the repercussion. But Sha'Carri Richardson worked very hard. She continued to be herself and put the work in and be one of the best female sprinters in the world. Work her way back, won the Olympic trials and represented our country very nicely in the Olympics and ended up coming in silver. And there's really no shame in that. Second fastest in the world, second best in a given event on this globe of 8 billion people. That's pretty impressive, right? So shout out Sha'Carri Richardson, ends up taking home the silver medal. So impressive there. Obviously in the swimming, we saw Katie Ledecky just continue to dominate. She's an absolute machine. I don't know if anybody watched that 1500-meter. And she swam that 1500 so fast that she was literally out of the pool celebrating and waving while the other competitors were still coming in. Like, that's how good she is. That's how dominant she is in that event, as well as the 800. So outstanding. She is our most decorated female Olympian ever now. So shouts to her, Katie Ledecky. So a lot of really good stuff going on in the Olympics. Very entertaining. Was Gabby Thomas, Harvard alum, and she won the women's 200-meter gold medal. So she broke up the opportunity for Julian Alfred to win the double. So Julian Alfred won the 100, but didn't get an opportunity to win the 200. She came in at silver, while Gabby Thomas of the United States won the gold medal. So shouts there. All right, Simone Biles. Simone Biles is arguably the greatest female gymnast of all time. She took away more medals. She's doing her thing. I mean, you just watch her and it's absolutely incredible. So love to Simone Biles. She's 27 years old, and now what everyone is asking is she going to be able to will it up one more time for the 2028 Olympics, which I believe they're in Los Angeles, I believe. So she may be able to dig up one more go around, especially being that they're home in the United States. So let's look out for that. All right, so those are some quick hits on the Olympics. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, this is not an Olympic topic, but if you've been watching the show, we've done topics on boxing recently. And Canelo Alvarez, this is a dude that I've talked about in terms of him basically using the Floyd Mayweather Jr. model of trying to manipulate fights and manipulate opposition. And so we know that Terrence Bud Crawford has won championships at multiple weight classes, started out fighting at 135, came all the way up, won another championship the other night at 154. And he says he's willing to go all the way up to 168 for the opportunity to fight Canelo Alvarez, not necessarily just for the money, but why? Because he believes it is a legacy defining fight. And now we got a problem. We got a problem. So Saudi, I think he's a minister of sport or a royal court advisor in Saudi Arabia, Turkey Al Sheikh. He has been making a lot of big fights lately. You see hashtag Riyadh season when it comes to boxing, Riyadh being the capital of Saudi Arabia. But he's been making a lot of big fights. We saw him make the what was it, the Usyk and Tyson Fury fight, which was awesome, and now they're getting the rematch. But he's been making a lot of big fights, right? So he's trying to make this Canelo Alvarez Terrence Crawford fight. But guess what? We got a problem because Canelo Alvarez basically says he doesn't want the fight, right? So just here's an article that I got from MMA Junkie, and basically these sentiments have been echoed in other articles. You can look it up, right? So anyway, um, Turkey Al Sheikh says that his interest in Canelo Alvarez has come to an end, and Canelo Alvarez has responded, Crawford needs to fight Teofimo Lopez first, and then we'll see. Like I've said, at the end of the day, I'm not asking for that fight. They want to make that fight because it's a payday, obviously, but I don't want that fight. Teofimo deserves it more than me. My response to Turkey is this. Yesterday, they texted me and they said, we can talk about the fight in February with Crawford. They texted me yesterday. I said, look, I don't want to talk about any other fight. I'm focused 100% on this fight being the fight coming up in September with Edgar Berlanga. And then Canelo goes on to say, look, I don't like the way he talks. I'm not in this position because of anything. If he wants to work with me, it's my way, not their way. I don't need it. So Turkey Al Sheikh responds, and this was like, I never heard anyone go at Canelo like this. He says, I heard what Canelo said, that he respects me, but he doesn't like the way we do business. As for him respecting me, it doesn't matter to me if he does or not. As for the way I do business, I know why he doesn't like it, because I only target big fights at fair prices. So, of course, anyone who likes easy fights won't like that. And I know how he feels after losing to Bivol. That's light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol, who will be fighting Artur Beterbiev in, I think, November or December. But anyway, he says, and I know how he feels after losing to Bivol. So he's been looking for easier fights ever since. Also, I'm not the one who's afraid of fighting David Benavidez, or Terrence Crawford. Therefore, I knew he was wasting our time and making excuses with big amounts of money that can't be paid. So I'm continuing my way to make big fights that serve the boxing world, and he's on his way to making easy show-only fights. Now, if you watch this show, you've heard me talk about Canelo and how he left the zone because the zone was trying to get him to fight David Benavidez and he refused to do it. So he ducked that fight. You've heard me talk about how he tried to manipulate the Gennady Golovkin thing. He wasn't going to fight him at all. And then Triple G got in the ring and challenged him, kind of, put his Mexican machismo out there for the whole world to see, kind of forced him into accepting that fight. Then they fought. And then they fought the rematch, and then he waited 4 more years when Triple G was already about 5 years older than him to fight that fight. So, you see what Canelo does in terms of ducking guys or fighting guys when he wants to and trying to manipulate the opposition. And great fighters, warriors don't do that. They line them up and you fight them when you're supposed to fight them and let the chips fall where they may. And if you're the best, you'll beat them. And maybe sometimes it's not your day, but then you get a rematch, and maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the fact is, nobody can say that you ran from anyone, or no one can say that you manipulated the situation. So I love the fact that Turkey Al Sheikh called out Canelo Alvarez regarding this behavior. I love it because we see too much now, and we see it in multiple sports, guys making quote unquote business decisions, especially in what we call warrior sports. Now, should guys get paid? Absolutely. Should guys understand their worth? Absolutely. I totally get that. However, I hate that I hate what's up, young disciple. Pleasure to see you, man. And good to see you. Good to see you. Why you don't do shows every time someone says LeBron the GOAT? You know what? That's a good question. You can call me and we'll talk about that after we do the segment. All right. Big Scoop, what's good? What's good? But yeah, so I love the fact that Turkey Al Sheikh called out Canelo Alvarez because I, it's about time that guys start getting called out for this behavior, man. Stop, especially if you're a fighter, like that's literally your job to go get in fights with people. So, stop running, stop hiding, stop trying to manipulate it. When they line them up, you fight them. That's all there is to it. And that's why I have so much more respect for that generation of, Muhammad Ali, Joe Frazier, George Foreman, that generation of Sugar Ray Leonard and Roberto Duran and Marvin Hagler and Tommy Hitman Hearns. Like, I get it. The money back then was nowhere near what it was now. But I mean, if you look at it, even back then, the money they were making was huge money compared to the average man. But regardless, guys understood that there was something to be said for the legacy of fighting everybody you're supposed to fight when you're supposed to fight them. So, that's my thought. And those are the quick hits. Those quick hits lasted a little longer than I expected, but yeah, I just wanted to touch on those notes on different items from the sports world. And all right, let's get it going. So, Michigan, right? So obviously college football is coming. And just a quick note, if you were with me last college football season when we were doing shows, I think this is before I started doing the lives and taking the calls and all that, but I used to have my guy Ryan Langford with me, who his dad actually played at Penn State University under Joe Paterno, and then he played about 10 years in the league with the Miami Dolphins. And then Ryan, he played 4 years at the University of Illinois as a wide receiver, and then he played with the Indianapolis Colts for a season. Then he spent about 5 or 6 years in the Canadian Football League as a wide receiver and kick returner. So he was my college football analyst, and he will actually be back with me this season. So looking forward to having Ryan get back in here in a few weeks. And you'll see probably every Sunday or Monday night, he's going to be with us during the college football season discussing big storylines and big games and all that. So definitely looking forward to having him with me. But the reason I bring him up, as you know, the Michigan Wolverines, if you're a college football fan, Michigan Wolverines won the national championship last year under Coach Jim Harbaugh and assistant coach, offensive line coach, and uh, offensive coordinator Sharon Moore. There you see Sharon Moore hugging Jim Harbaugh. So they won the national championship last year, but the problem is it was kind of marred with controversy. And there's a big controversy with a guy named Connor Stallions, who was a Michigan staffer, and basically he's been caught out there at a number of future opponents, and he was recording and stealing the signs for those opponents, ostensibly to provide that information to Michigan players and coaching staff to make those games easier to win. And a lot of people feel like that's how Michigan won the championship. Now, do I feel that way? No, I don't feel that way. I feel like Michigan, as we saw, was clearly the best team on the field after all the years there. Jim Harbaugh was able to finally get the right blend of coaching staff. He was able to get the right blend of players. He was able to properly institute his brand of football, and they were able to finally take that and beat their nemesis, I think 3 times in a row, Ohio State, and then win two consecutive, I want to say 2 or 3 consecutive Big Ten championships, go to 3 straight college football playoffs, and then win a national championship last year, right? So, but a lot of people, Ohio State fans mainly, and a lot of other people feel like Michigan would not have been able to do that had they not had Connor Stallions involved in the sign stealing. And so that became a whole big thing. Obviously, and of course, there's supposedly the issue of impermissible recruiting practices during the COVID time that Jim Harbaugh was supposedly involved in. So a lot of craziness going on. Again, to me, if you win it on the field, like there's not a whole lot anybody can say. Like they could say, okay, we're going to vacate the wins. They could say, we're going to take back the trophy, blah, blah, blah. But everybody who watches college football or has any rooting interest in college football saw the Michigan Wolverines develop their program over time, go out there, be the best team last year, 15-0, and win the national championship. Now, that said, a lot of people have a lot of different feelings on this Michigan scandal thing. I've talked to a lot of different people about it. My guy John Kennedy from the Always Irish Notre Dame Football Podcast, he and I were talking about it. He detests Michigan, obviously, as a diehard Notre Dame fan. And one of the things he was saying was that even if after the Connor Stallions, was removed from the program, Michigan kept on winning. But his argument is we can never properly identify how much the quote unquote cheating prior to his dismissal helped build up the confidence, helped build up the momentum, helped build up the recruiting over time that led Michigan to be in a position to end up winning that national championship. I don't put a whole lot of credence in that. One of the things I heard last year, I think Deion Sanders, coach of the Colorado Buffaloes, Coach Prime, one of the things he said when he was asked about it was, listen, you can know all the plays, but at the end of the day, offensively, and this is not an exact quote, but offensively, you got to go out there and execute. Defensively, you got to stop it. So you can know all the plays, but you still have to go out there and do it. And I think there is something to that, right? So anyway, back to Ryan Langford, my college football analyst. The reason I bring him up, I asked him about this last season, And he said basically everyone steals signs. Right now, did Michigan apparently with Connor Stallions take that to a whole nother level? Yeah, maybe so, right? Maybe so. But everyone steals signs. And Brady Quinn, former Notre Dame football quarterback, former NFL quarterback, and now one of the hosts of the Two Pros and a Cup of Joe show on Fox Sports Radio every weekday morning. I remember him talking about this last season. One of the things he said, again, not an exact quote, he says that when he was about 10 years old or so, he had 10 or 11, he had an uncle or a cousin or somebody who was a coach at some higher level, maybe high school or something like that. And he remembers that the guy would literally give him binoculars and a pen and a pad and put him in the stands and tell him to watch what the other team was doing, i.e. steal their signs, write it down to be able to identify what they're doing. Everyone steals signs. Ryan Langford told me everyone steals signs, to different levels. So this whole business of, they stole signs, that's the only way they could win, I think that's absurd. I really do. And at the end of the day, it's just, look, I'm a Notre Dame fan as well, which means I'm not a huge Michigan fan. I am happy Michigan beat Alabama, so that's great. But I'm not a huge Michigan fan as a result. But at the end of the day, Jim Harbaugh went there. He built the program. The program started falling off towards the end of his tenure. He rebuilt the program. He got some help from his brother, John Harbaugh, in terms of defensive scheme and defensive coaching. And he was able to build the program the way he wanted it. And eventually they crossed over that bridge and they went and they won a national championship. Like, that's all there is to it. So now the NCAA, which is pretty much a toothless tiger, they're out here and they want to do show cause and they want to threaten to suspend people and this, that, and the third. And I think it's really ridiculous. So anyway, I was listening to the ESPN College Football Game Day podcast earlier today, and they were talking about this very topic. So I have something here, and I wanted to go ahead and I'll play that for you and then come back and talk a little more about it.
The Committee on Fractions ultimately is going to have to come up with a decision. Remember, they did push back against Michigan last year when they tried to negotiate a resolution. They said, no. They basically didn't think Jim Harbaugh was going to get punished enough, and they thought him lying, misleading, whatever he did, whatever jargon you want to use for his obstinance towards this process, which has continued since he went to the NFL. They said, no, that's not enough, and they kind of had to table that. So Moore is ultimately, his fate is going to go there. As a level 2, I would think ultimately that gets distilled to a short suspension of some kind. That is, it could be no suspension, it could be a short suspension. I don't think we're looking at anything. It's hard, if you look at what happened in the college basketball scandal, it's hard to have a significant. You've really got to break some rules to do that. He obviously allegedly deleted a thread of 52 text messages. It does later say he turned them over. If the text messages had "Hey Connor, what's Ohio State's run sign" or whatever, it would probably be noted in here, and it's not. So I think that he's in here for the act of failing to cooperate, basically. And then eventually he did. And you can read through the lines here and say, seemingly there was no giant smoking gun, or they would have noted the smoking gun. And there would have been a level 1. The other 4 coaches who are gone, who are accused of failing to cooperate, have level 1s. So that nuance makes me think, if you're going to read the tea leaves for what this independent Star Wars bar is going to decide, it would come down to likely some type of short suspension. But as we've said for the years, Reese, the NCAA, they kind of make it up as they there's no they point you to this penalty matrix, but the cases never follow the penalty matrix. So it's really hard to do that. So that's track 1 here, and then track 2 here that I think the fans want to know, the people on Twitter have reacted to, is, will there be a postseason ban?
No.
Correct. That's basically
and there's going to be no vacating of anything.
Correct. That is 1,000%.
I'm not going to pretend that they didn't win it.
So the vacating thing, I can say with full-throated confidence, because that would involve, they take away wins when it involves when it involves players who aren't eligible.
Yeah.
And there are no players implicated in here directly by name or anything. So that, looking back, there will be nothing. Looking forward, you could say technically some type of postseason ban is on the table. The actual likelihood of that happening, considering Tennessee, considering the political climate, considering the NCAA has basically come out and said we don't want to punish teams. Like I would, and again, I called a bunch of people who traffic in this world, and they were all like, we'd be shocked, we'd be shocked, we'd be shocked. So again, it comes down to a room full of people and how they react. So you can never 100% predict it, but I would say, looking at this, it would seem unlikely. What is likely is Michigan cuts a big old check.
You heard a whole lot there, a whole lot of word salad. And my whole thing is this, like, one, Jim Harbaugh has already gone off to the NFL, and it's unlikely that he's going to return to college. I mean, maybe he has a bad stretch in the NFL, which again is unlikely because he's had success as a head coach everywhere he's been, right? Remember last time he was in the NFL, he was there 4 years, and 3 of those years he was in the NFC Championship game, and 1 of those years he was in the Super Bowl. So Jim Harbaugh is really an outstanding coach. We know that given any level of talent and the opportunity to build out his team the way he wants, he is going to have a successful program, right? And he's already done it, right? He drafted arguably the best offensive lineman in the draft this year, Joe Alt, left tackle out of Notre Dame. He's going to put him at right tackle now because he's already got Rashawn Slater, one of the best young left tackles in the league, to protect Justin Herbert's blind side, So he's already got he's already working on building that elite O-line. You know, he's going to run the football. So you've got that. I mean, Jim Harbaugh, he builds programs the way he wants to. He's got pass rushers on the other side with Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, and he's got Derwin James, who's a run stopper. He's brought in Greg Roman to run his offense, and coincidentally, Greg Roman ran his offense when he was in San Francisco last time with Colin Kaepernick and Alex Smith. Had a lot of success there. And Greg Roman also ran the offense in Baltimore for one of Lamar Jackson's MVP years, had a lot of success there. And coincidentally, again, the Baltimore connection continues because he's got J.K. Dobbins and Gus, can't remember his last name, but 2 of the running backs that were in Baltimore. So you can tell Jim Harbaugh is going to play the type of football that Jim Harbaugh is going to play. And the assumption is that he is going to have some level of success in the NFL. Is he going to win a championship? We will see. He seems to have pretty much most of everything he wants, but we'll see if he's able to take it to the level of winning the championship. But regardless, he's going to have success. Anyway, the reason I bring that up is because for whatever reason, the NCAA, like I mentioned earlier, pretty much a toothless tiger, has for some reason they have waited for Jim Harbaugh to leave college football to issue the show cause and say basically if he comes back, he could be suspended for a year, no matter what team he goes to coach, based on the quote unquote infractions that allegedly happened, the impermissible recruiting, buying a recruit a cheeseburger, and having involvement with a recruit during a recruiting dead period in COVID. And then, of course, his quote unquote involvement in the spying with Connor Stallion. And then you heard reference to a string of 52 text messages being deleted. Now that allegedly was Sharon Moore, Michigan's current head coach, who I guess the day the Connor Stallions report came out last year, he allegedly deleted a string of 52 text messages. Now, as they also said in that clip we just played, they deleted the 52 text messages, but if there was something that was deliberately or majorly incriminating, then we would have heard about it in the report, but there wasn't. So it's like, okay. Now, again, we know the Buckeye fans, they're looking for something because they just can't believe that Michigan is going to beat them 3 years in a row. I mean, how about they beat Michigan a number of years in a row, and these things kind of go back and forth in terms of like a seesaw or teeter-totter, whatever you want to call it, over time, right? You have a few years that are going to be in Michigan's favor. You're going to have some years that's going to be in Ohio State's favor. This is how rivalries work, right? This is how rivalries work. And so Michigan did their thing en route to winning their championship. So, like, obviously, the Ohio State fans, they are going to be looking for something. Maybe the Notre Dame fans are going to be looking for something. Maybe a lot of people on the whole who don't like Harbaugh or don't like Michigan in college football are going to be looking for something because they need some explanation as to why a team and a coach that play old school football and don't necessarily get a lot of the fastest, biggest, strongest recruits were able to build their program out in a way that allowed them to win a national championship and beat the greatest coach of all time in college football history, arguably the greatest coach of all time college football history, Nick Saban, and the resident bully on the block, Alabama Crimson Tide, on the way to that championship. So, people are always looking for reasons. They're looking for excuses. But at the end of the day, for me, I'm like, yeah, I get it. There's a lot, and it seems like, okay, yeah, they were cheating, they were doing this or doing that. But, at the end of the day, even after Connor Stallions was dismissed and if they were doing anything and they stopped doing it, they were still winning, right? So, and here's the other thing. Let's say they were cheating because allegedly other teams in the Big Ten knew about it. So if you knew about it, why didn't you change your signals? Why didn't you do something different? So if you knew that they were watching you and they had your signals and they had your signs, you could have used that to your advantage, right? You could have made them think you were doing one thing and then did something totally different. Change your signals, change your signs. What's the problem here? At what point are we going to take some personal responsibility for what went down here? Everybody steals signs. We know it. So again, if you know that they stole your signs or you believe they stole your signs, change your signs, do something different. How about Michigan did what they do? They lined up, they smacked you in the mouth on both sides of the line of scrimmage, whether it was defensive line or whether it was offensive line. They ran the football down your throat and they did what they wanted to do. That's all it was to it. They weren't running a bunch of fancy gadget plays and all that stuff. They were out there playing physical, old school football. And if you couldn't stop that, or you were upset about it, Michigan never, I don't believe, under Harbaugh had a top 10 recruiting class. So you couldn't stop that. You knew that they were supposedly and allegedly cheating and stealing your signs. Well, I don't know. At some point, that sounds like a you problem because you could have done something to adjust for that. But that's just me.